Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Listening to staticky jazz music for endless minutes while on hold, standing around for hours waiting for the technician to arrive. Does this remind you of your satellite company? Dish hears your pain and believes you deserve a better TV experience. Dish is ranked #1 in customer service nationally by J.D. Power and customers. Plus, Dish offers 75-minute arrival windows for their technician appointments. That means you can spend more time enjoying all your favorite shows and live action. With the latest technology and the best support team, dial 1-844-CALL-DISH, go to dish.com or visit a local retailer near you to switch to Dish. Dish listens. It's how they stay tuned into you. Based on J.D. Power 2017 U.S. television service provider satisfaction study. For more information, visit jdpower.com. We were just talking about with the president of the NAACP the court case that was ruled on yesterday, and how they actually ruled that the baker had a right not to bake that cake. For the same-sex couple. We're going to talk about a book right now, Plantation, Jesus, Race, Faith, and a New Way Forward by Scot, Welch, and Rick Wilson with Andy Cumbo Floyd. Joining us now live is Scot Welch, the author of Plantation, Jesus, one of the co-authors. Scott, you with us? How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Mark. How are you, man?
Fine. And full disclosure, my cousin Oliver Johnson produced this segment. Scott is a relative, not by blood, but my mother's first cousin's father is first cousins with Scott. Now you all know. Right. Don't act like y'all confused about that, because y'all know about y'all got them relationships we all have, but we all still family. No question, right. No question about it. And I just want to disclose that. Not that I care if anybody has a problem with that. I could care less, because this book is important. Scott and I actually, this is the first time we've met. It's the first time we've talked.
I know, Mark. And everybody said, you should meet Mark. You should meet Mark. And so I'm glad to finally, meet, man. Although we're not in the same space at this time, at your studio. But it's just great to meet you.
No, it is great. Well, the book is time, as I was sharing with you. We just memorialized James Cone here in New York, even here on the air, and we talked about with him, the concept of God being black, God being a God of the oppressed, and then we hear about this case yesterday. So your book is actually very, very timely. Tell us about Plantation Jesus.
So Plantation Jesus is essentially this idea that, during Reconstruction, we had this personification of a system called Jim Crow.
Right.
And so we kind of look at that as kind of facing outward into culture. Well, Plantation Jesus is, I would say, very similar, if not the same system as Jim Crow, but it was actually pointed at the church. And so we sometimes give the church a pass, in saying, that it was not complicit in all the different things that Jim Crow was a part of. But Plantation Jesus is essentially a system that was back in place then, is still in place now in some way, shape, or form, that is very comfortable with, things like bigotry, racism, and this whole idea of the whole idea of America being a Christian nation, the ethnicity of Jesus, and oppression and the marginalization of people. And so Plantation Jesus is a system, but we had to personify that system. And Plantation Jesus, by the way, Mark, is very much at odds with the real Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the synopsis.
Well, and they definitely are, attempting to bring that back. It's no more glaring than in that very case on yesterday. We literally just hung up with the president of the NAACP, and what he was saying was that this case yesterday, Scott, really opens a door to go back to the old ways, but under the guise of religion, saying that.
Yeah.
So what if the Starbucks manager had said, "Well, we're kicking these brothers out because of my religious disagreement with them, or because they don't comport, or this woman with this hijab, we don't want her in here, or in the case of the baker, I'm not making a cake." The court was kind of slick, though. They said, well, if they had just asked for something else, they would have had to sell it to him. But he didn't have to actually create and bake a new cake because of his religious expression. Well, that kind of ruling opens a door and bakes, really metaphorically, bakes a whole new cake for the rest of us.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is that we better all be aware, right, of all the different things happening in our society, and this whole idea of ignorance being bliss is not. That ignorance now will really leave you in a very, very bad state, And there's no time to sleep or to become complacent. I think we've seen that actually with what
Right.
we're kind of existing within now, the structure. And so my whole thing is that, what I want to do and what we wanted to do with the book is to have people understand that, if you want to understand the present, you got to go back into the past. And if you track it back to current day, a lot of this stuff just makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to cast it in that lens to help people understand that, these things are very much in play, and Plantation Jesus is very much in play. And so, that's what we wanted to do with the book.
So, tell us a bit about you, Scott, and
Sure.
your background. Are you in religious studies or a theologian, anything, or?
No, so this is funny, Mark. I think it's kind of like this, kind of multifaceted. So I've been in actually diversity and inclusion work, organizational structure and systems transformation for 25 years now.
Okay.
So I work with some of the largest organizations around the world, still do. So that's kind of, if you want to kind of contrast it, right? So that's kind of my day job, right?
Right.
So I do that with lots of organizations and everything. But then I'm also I'm an ordained pastor as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm also one of the lead family care pastors for my church, in Kalamazoo and in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then I do lots of things with the arts. I'm involved in the local TEDx movement in our city. I started a thing for our young people called the Mosaic Film Experience, which is our kids, high school and college, doing film on mobile devices, because that brings down a socioeconomic barrier. So that's my background, and the book is really a result of a promise I made to Rick. He passed away several years ago, and essentially he said, "Hey, if I stay, I will finish the book. If I leave, you're going to finish the book."
Mm-hmm.
And that was right. So I'm kind of it's an eclectic thing, and that's really my background. But everything that I do, Mark, everything that I do, I want it to bridge and help create community. That's the thing. That's my heart's cry.
Yeah.
Is that we can't exist separate from each other. We get stupider by the minute, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
We've got to try to work with each other. And it's not even that you have to agree with each other. People think sometimes that to be in the same room, you've got to be, you've got to agree with every person in the room. And that's not true. I think, one of the things, because Rick was Scotch-Irish, 67 years old. I said he's my Scotch-Irish brother from another mother. But one of the things we would do in our conversations, and even sometimes we would argue, we would agree. We already had ground rules that we would never, ever leave the table. So we would always stay there and just hash it out until we were back where we needed to be again. And I wish that's what people would do. I tell, Plantation Jesus is a book that's going to stir much discussion, disagreement, and things like that. But, one of the folks asked us, well, is it a divisive book? I said, no. Actually, I think it's one of those that actually is a catalyst book for true community. Because if you can talk about things like the ethnicity of Jesus, if you can talk about the church and its complicit nature in slavery, or the Christian nation, all those things, if you can actually talk about that, you can actually get to some real conversations, because beyond that veil, that's where true relationship resides. And so I think more than anything, Plantation Jesus is a catalyst book for real community.
So, Scott, let's game this out. And you even have discussion questions here. I presume that the idea is for, and I just put up on our graphic on the screen, for those of you on Facebook, a tweet by one of your other co-authors, Andy Cumbo Floyd, about how church is still the most segregated time of the week. But I notice you have discussion questions in the book, so I presume the idea is for people to have these conversations, and in groups, big groups and small groups, and actually go through some of these discussion questions, right?
That's exactly right, Mark.
Okay.
I mean, so the questions in the back are because, we've got to. If you can't, I always say this book is. You can enjoy this book by yourself, but it's best enjoyed and the value of it, rather. I think the true value is within groups and groups that are
Right.
different people in the room. So the questions right there in the back, actually in the back of the bookmark, we have exercises, literally to kind of to work with different people, because again, that's my background, and so we've got exercises for people to walk through together, and then we've got a really substantive bibliography with videos and documentaries and other books that they can look into. So yeah, this is about having conversations in community.
So, how do we get a group of people in the room who believe God is white with somebody like me who believes God is black and a woman and oppressed and Latino and LGBTQI? So what so you have to be the discussion leader in that. So
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna make you role play.
No,
How do
this
we?
is funny because, well, it's funny. I always say, for what I like to do, my company that during the day, the firm I lead is called Global Bridge Builders, right? And so I said,
Right.
when I watched the towers back in 2001 when they fell, and I really had this thing that occurred to me at the start. I said, wow, look at these amazing firemen, firewomen, how they run towards the building. They know
Right.
this building is falling. And I said, wow, it takes a different type of a person. And someone told me one day, they said, you tend to run towards those towers too in these conversations that you're willing to be right in the middle of, right? I said, it's just the way, that I'm wired. And so, I would always say that what can convene a room like this, Mark, are people that are really hungering after the truth, right? This is for folks that they want to step outside of their kind of predisposed idea of what is real, what is true, right? What is truth. And they'll say, maybe I don't have it all figured out.
Right.
I'm going to go into a room and at least hear out someone. I may vehemently disagree with that person, but I still am a person who's willing to learn, right? I'm still, for instance, I've been in this work for a long time, and I call myself a senior beginner,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've been at it for a while, but I'm open to learn. I learn something new from people every single day, and I think
Right.
that's how you get somebody in a room where you've got all the different communities that you just talked about. Are we looking for the truth, and are we willing to lay down these agendas? Are we willing to lay down even what we think is true,
Right.
right? And we can pick it back up, but in the meantime, are you willing to learn from somebody that might be different from you?
Right. No, that's important to think about. I was in, and folks, feel free to join our conversation. Well, first of all, let me say this. Part of the problem is that there is still physical segregation on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
We go to white churches and black
Yep.
churches.
Yep.
So we first have to figure out a way to even get all of us in the same space, and maybe
It's
even the
true.
same sanctuary, and with an agreement to have these kinds of conversations. I don't know how we do that, but I know when we were in Selma in March, and there
Yeah.
was a meeting of a group of ministers, and a white minister, Scott, said something really profound. As a white pastor with a predominantly white congregation,
Yeah.
and I think he was Episcopalian, so he admitted he was a part of the frozen chosen.
Yes. Yes, sir.
But what he said is that he was a little more generous and optimistic toward his white parishioners. But what he said was interesting and may make things even worse. He said his role as a white minister to a white congregation is to convince his good parishioners, his good Christian members in the pew, that they are allowing institutions they support to commit racism on their behalf. So they may be good, and they may come to church every Sunday, and they may pray, and they may offer, and they may say, they may even say Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
but yet are silent. Letter from the Birmingham jail, are silent
Yep. Yep.
when it comes to institutions that they are neglecting, that are committing sins on their behalf.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting too. In the book, one of the just legends really that we quote, one of our early leaders, it's Frederick Douglass. He wrote, "Between the Christianity of this land and the Christianity of Christ, I recognize the widest possible difference."
Yeah.
Right. And so people, by being complicit, the thing is, that's how it happens. It's by being complicit. It's the people that were at Dachau, living in the areas of Dachau and Auschwitz.
Right.
You know, it's one thing not knowing, but you see the smokestacks as you go to work in the morning. You're like, wait, what's going on there?
Right.
Well, we got smokestacks right now in our neighborhoods, right? When people, and I told folks, it's because we have this notion of this idea of, there's a very big difference, Mark, between being Christocentric and Christo-conscious, right? Ethnocentric and ethno-conscious, right? And so when the Trayvons happened, the Sandra Bland, the Philando Castile, the Orlando nightclub, you've got generally one ethnic group that would respond towards the injustice, and other ethnic groups, albeit they all name themselves as Christians, they would actually not say anything.
Yeah.
And I said that's because they saw themselves as their ethnicity first, right? But what I'm suggesting is that if we truly were Christocentric, see, God loves the fact that I'm African American, right? He made me that, and I celebrate my brown skin, right? And if He made my other brother or sister Latino or Polish or what, I get with all that. That's fine.
Right.
But my first filter I need to look through is my filter of being a Christian first.
Yeah.
And everything else needs to submit to that, right?
Yeah.
Me being a father, me being an African American man, all those things. And so what happens is in churches, when pastors, like I say, a lot of pastors, unfortunately, it's economics, Mark. They tiptoe through the tithers. And so
right.
They don't want to take a stand because that's going to reduce the giving. And I'm suggesting that, you know what, who's your source?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, if as a leader, you are obligated and mandated to deal with this issue, because we can talk about all these different things, but when you talk about even this whole idea of being pro-life, and I said, okay, well, I am, but I'm whole life. In other words, it's not just the child coming out of the womb, but we have to give the child opportunity to grow up, right, in a fair society, give him or her opportunities to make money, to start their own business, whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
And so we have to be involved. We can't sit on the sidelines and act like everything's okay. And I actually think that, we have the opportunity as the faith community to lead those deep discussions. But if we don't, someone else will. But I tell you one thing, that, one thing is that love never fails. And love is tough sometimes, by the way. It's not always this mushy-gushy stuff.
Right.
Love demands that we speak truth to each other.
Indeed. Scott Welch was, folks, we're pretty much out of time, but let me just do a couple things here. Sure. I'd like for us to have some follow-up discussion, and maybe even figure out a way to do some of these exercises on the air.
Oh, that'd be great.
And maybe you and I can talk offline and assemble some Christians from different sects in real time to have some of these conversations. I'd love to do that and kind of workshop that a bit. You mentioned the tithers. Yeah, everybody did. And let me be honest with you, they even do that in black churches too, y'all. Because some of our black churches don't want the preacher to talk about what Scott and I are talking about. See, James Cone never pastored. You understand? And he was a theologian. Most theologians don't pastor, but they didn't want. Let me tell you something, Scott. At the funeral, I saw a whole lot of preachers there. I was shocked, and I'm talking about preachers who never said a word regarding James Cone in their pulpit. But when I looked out there amongst that crowd, I said, "Oh, I see. Y'all wanted to probably say what James Cone was saying and believed it, but even your own black church didn't want to hear that." And then we've been, there's this virus, I call it a virus of this prosperity. So it's either the tithers or the prosperity. And you got folk going to church right now. It's happening in the white church too. You got folks going to church today thinking about a car or some material object. See, Scott, you done got me started now. Let me just pull it back.
This is good.
So all the way around, and then when people say to me, well, we don't like preachers, Mark. We don't like you. We don't like you on the radio because you're preaching. I don't preach on the radio. It's not a religious show per se. But when I start talking about what we're talking about, people say, oh, well, this kind of religion I want to hear. So we ought to pull all this together and workshop this. And, if I need to, we don't have to do it over the phone. Let's meet up somewhere and get in the room. And I'm happy to do that. First of all, tell us your church too, man. I want people to know.
Oh, yeah. It's a Stone's Church. It's actually Christian Life Center Stone's Church.
Okay.
And it's Pastor Joel A. Brooks Jr. We have a location in Kalamazoo, Michigan,
Okay.
and one in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So if they go to stoneschurch.com, they'll see what's up. Very, very. It's just, I mean, I love my pastors, and we get to the heart of the matter. That's
Good.
one of the things I really enjoy about the ministry.
Yeah. Well, bottom line too is, folks, and I hope all of you listening, wherever you are, you would agree that our churches ought to be talking about what's relevant and what's going on, not just something in the abstract, safe space. Matter of fact, don't make sense. Some y'all subscribe to Sirius XM. Y'all pay for me to talk the way I'm talking, and then you tithe to the church that don't say nothing. So that's kind of you kind of living in your own contradiction. So I'm just calling that out, y'all. I know I'm on somebody's street. So Plantation Jesus, Race, Faith, and a New Way Forward. Oliver gonna get me and you in trouble. But we appreciate your cousin Oliver. Folks, check out the book.
We do.
This is a challenge to us all. If our faith and our beliefs are really supposed to bring us together, not divide us. So
true.
If you don't want to come together, you're going to resist what Scott is saying and you resist the book. But if you really want to come together, black and white, Jew and Gentile, then, because I'm going to tell you, see, this even touches on the whole Middle East conflict.
It does.
Okay? And we won't get into all that right now, but it even touches on that and some of our contradictions in that regard. And, Israel in the Bible versus Israel, the political state. So we can get deep. Scott, I look forward to doing that too, man. Let me congratulate you on the book. Thank you for writing this, and thank you. God bless Rick's memory. And thank you to Andy. And brother, just keep it up, and let's pull it all together, okay?
I love that, Mark. And thanks again, man, for your time, for having me on your show.
Oh, really, no question about it. No, we will do this again. We're going to pull all this together, brother, okay?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right. He's Scott Welch on Twitter as well. Folks, get Plantation Jesus. That's your summer reading assignment from this show. Yeah. So it's going to be required, and it's got questions in it, y'all, so there will be a pop quiz. Right. We'll do it. Take care, my brother.
Hey, thanks, man. Talk to you later. God
all
bless
right.
you, man.
Take
Bye-bye.
care now. All right, folks.